let's bring John McMullen into the conversation at JF McMullen on Twitter, and he joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Johnny Mac, a strange game last night to say the least, but you think it was a quote-unquote good loss by the Eagles. You had them losing the game healthy, but they almost won the game not healthy.
Well, and that's kind of why it's a good loss. That kind of sums it up pretty succinctly. It's a bad spot. I talked about it all week. I didn't expect them to win the game, and they should have won the game with all those injuries. And if you think about what losing Dallas Goedert pregame, and then I think Deshaun played 11 snaps. Alshon was, 4 or 6? I forget the exact number. Your whole game plan is thrown in the garbage from seconds into the game, essentially. And you're kind of grasping for straws. And it was ugly early, obviously. And late, they had that game. Nelson Aguilar catches that football. I think they win the game. And I think that's pretty amazing. So that's what I mean. It's not a moral victory if you guys think that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they shouldn't have won that football game. They had an opportunity to win it, and they had no right to have an opportunity to win it. So to me, that's positive.
John, from an injury standpoint, obviously losing Tim Jernigan, and there's kind of reports that it's there was one report that it was for the year, and then Pro Football Talk said, oh, wait, no, just a couple of weeks. But we started off 2 weeks ago talking about all the great depth that this team compiled at defensive tackle, and within a matter of 2 weeks it's gone. How do they navigate going forward for the next few weeks without Jernigan?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be 4 to 6, so it's going to be a pretty significant time frame. And if you think about Hassan Ridgeway, and I tweeted this a couple weeks ago, he was the 4th defensive tackle. Now he's going to start next week. Akeem Spence was unemployed week 1. Now he's going to be the 3rd defensive tackle. He played, I think, 21 snaps last night. So, yeah, I mean, that's an issue, no question about it. And they have Bruce Hector. They can elevate him from the practice squad. Howie Roseman is always in the mix for bringing somebody outside the organization. But, again, I don't know how much that's going to help you short term. And Jernigan's injury is short term enough that you don't want to bring in a big name because he's going to be back. So I think you just sort of make do. And it's difficult, but that's what this league is about. It happens all over. I mean, yesterday was a really, really physical game, but I mean, it could have been much worse. Jernigan is the most serious injury. Corey Clement's probably going to be out a couple weeks. And other than that, I don't think anything is serious, really serious. So from that, it's a positive standpoint. And you look at some of the other issues, Ben Roethlisberger, number 1, Drew Brees, could be a lot worse.
Hey, John, I don't have that many. As you mentioned, the good loss, the fact they fought hard and should have never even been in that game and were. I guess one of my criticisms would be if Doug made it seem like he really wanted to play a lot more 12 personnel and maybe get his running game going out of that. And they went into a road game against a tough physical team, primetime, with just 2 tight ends, because they had released Alex Ellis and he's back on the practice squad, and they decided not to promote him again. If that's what you want to do, be a heavy 12 personnel team, it's my belief that, well, then you have to be accountable for it and at least have somebody to be able to play if one of your 2 tight ends gets hurt. And so I guess that's where I feel like maybe there was a little bit of an arrogance in there because they won the opener without having to use that 3rd tight end very much. So they felt in this game that they wouldn't need it either, and it burned them.
No, I don't think it's arrogance, because I questioned Doug about this at Cutdown Day, and he actually gave the explanation. I thought it was a good one, to be honest, and I didn't think about it. And the fact is, and he said he was going to go heavy 12 yesterday, and that got ruined right away, as you mentioned, Jeff. But he said he's going heavy 12 in general when he does, because they have so much confidence in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. If one of them were to go down, well, then he's going to play 11. So it's not a matter of having that 3rd tight end and you're going to keep playing 12 personnel. That's not what they would do, because they think
but it almost
receiver.
It sounded like he said today, though, that he was hoping to use 12 to get a good run game going against this team, which is a little lighter up front. So that's where I thought, yeah, you can go to 11 now, but now you're not as big up front as you claimed that you wanted to be. They could have thrown an extra tackle out there if they wanted to do that.
Anytime, and that's where I'll say anytime you're talking about Doug Peterson and the run game, there is a little bit of lip service because he doesn't want to run the football. Let's be honest. And he doesn't like to run the football. He would rather throw the football. He could have just put Vaitai or Andre Dillard in there as an extra tight end if you just wanted to line up and run the football. That's not what he wants to do. That's not what he ever wants to do. He only plays 12 personnel because both of the tight ends are such good receivers. And the second part of that is the Eagles ran the ball a decent amount. They didn't run it effectively. Hey, Dallas Goedert is certainly a better blocker than Zach Ertz at tight end. But I don't think all of a sudden they're going to turn into a dominant run team because Dallas is out there. I just think they like him as a receiver, and they like what he offers from a personnel package.
What were your thoughts on the running back by committee, John? I need your take here now because I asked you that question last week and you got fired up. You almost strangled me through the phone here. So Sproles 16.
Now you're just throwing chum to the shark.
I'm joking. So Sproles 16 touches last week, 0 last night. Jordan Howard, there was some anticipation that maybe this would be the Jordan Howard game. They throw Miles out there to start on Sunday Night Football on the road when like 9 months ago he was playing Northwestern. What's your thoughts on that whole running back situation?
Well, I think my thoughts are going to evolve like Carson Wentz's back injury. My thoughts this week are, first of all, it's still a terrible committee because nobody understands their roles from week to week. I think you would prefer to have people settle in. I don't understand the lack of use of Jordan Howard. But the second, and this goes all the way back to the off-season and training camp, and I said a lot of times to all of you guys, they're improved at running back from last year when it was really bad, but it's still one of the worst positions on this team. I often criticize fans for skipping steps with young players, and I think you saw it with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. If anybody expected him to hit the ground running, look, it takes time. Not everybody's going to be a superstar from the first time they're put on the field. Now, I expect that from fans. I don't expect it from the Eagles. I don't expect it from the coaching staff. They are skipping steps with Miles Sanders. The assumption he is ready to be a starting running back in this league, look, I thought you saw a lot of caution. He wasn't running hard. I don't get it. I don't get what they're doing at the running back position. And so far, it's a small sample size. Hopefully it improves, but it's not good.
John, I wanted to ask you, because we touched on this a little bit earlier before you just joined us here, about the Eagles' struggles early on in games. And we don't really know what to pinpoint with that when that topic comes up, but they've only scored 2 touchdowns in the last 12 first quarters of games. They've been outscored 30-13 in the first half of games this year. They've gone 5 straight road games without a first quarter touchdown. What the heck's the answer to all of that?
Well, I mean, that has been a narrative for a long time, and as you point out, rightfully so. I don't think it's legitimate yesterday if you take that game because of what happened, and because the game plan was essentially thrown out so early. I kind of expect them to struggle early in that situation. It wouldn't surprise me if they struggled the entire game. So I think long term, yeah, they've had a lot of issues starting quickly, and we've been talking about that for a long time. Doug answers questions about it every week, but I don't think yesterday's game fits into that. Now, it's hard to say they would have been successful because they're never successful, but I think it's legitimate to point out that, look, turn the other side of the coin. Let's say the Falcons lose Hooper and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. You think they're going to do well from their game plan standpoint? So I kind of throw yesterday's game out from that, but long term, this success is what it is, or the lack of success. It's been an issue.
Hey, John, give us your thoughts on the game plan that Jim Schwartz brought to the table last night. And I guess, the secondary, I mean, Darby had a rough night, it seemed. And what did you think? We hear all the time, they don't blitz enough. Did you like the mix and the balance that he brought last night? I mean, they gave up 24, but overall, what did you think of the defensive effort and the game plan by Schwartz?
Well, I mean, the blitz gives and it takes away, and you saw it in the same game. Jim blitzed far more than he usually does. I think part of that is because they've seen the Falcons so much, and maybe he wanted to throw them a little bit of a curveball, and I think it worked at times. Got beat at the worst possible time. So it's sort of a give and take, and that's always what you have with the blitz. I don't think that's going to be a trend moving forward, and we'll see. Certainly with those corners, it shouldn't be a trend. I would begin to criticize that if they continue to do it. And you mentioned Darby. We always talk about, and I'll even throw myself into this category, we always talk about people coming off ACL tears, and they're not comfortable. Certainly he's about 9 months off an ACL tear. Nobody's going to be 100%. Nobody's going to feel comfortable. And it's like we wipe it from our mind. We see it with Carson Wentz, and we don't think it's going to happen with Ronald Darby. Well, guess what? It's happening. He's not 100%. He's struggling with it. And I don't think that should be a surprise to anyone. And it's an issue because the Eagles are not very good at the cornerback position right now.
Yeah, that's one thing real quick on Darby. He got beat a couple of plays. He got beat last week as well. Is there any I guess there's not. I say, is there any thing that they can do to change that? But we saw last year Mills was getting beat pretty consistently for a while, and everybody was up in arms. But Jim's pretty stubborn with his guys. He's not thinking about making any moves or changes there.
No, well, I don't. Who are you going to make a change with until Jalen Mills comes back? And to be honest, I think he probably would make a change if Jalen was here. I know that's not going to excite the fan base, but he's on the PUP list till at least week 6, after week 6. So you don't have options. He's their best corner. They're consistent behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. That's what they believe. And they're going to have to fight through his fighting through coming back from this ACL. And I think, hey, he got beat twice. It was almost twice in a row. I think it was twice in a row.
Yeah.
With a couple
it was at least in the same series.
Yeah. And then when he got beat for the touchdown, I mean, he was supposed to have safety help there. So it's interesting. You get beat for the touchdown, you get blamed for it. You're supposed to get help. You probably should have got beaten. Quarterback makes bad throws, and people kind of forget about it. So it's always a bunch of different things, as Jim will always say. But, yeah, I mean, Ronald has not played well. But who has at corner? I think Rasul and Sidney were a little bit better yesterday. But if you got confidence in those two, I don't know what you're watching.
John, let's talk about the D-line rotations, because this was the first game without Malik Jackson, and it looked like at times you saw Josh Sweat surprisingly moved inside there. There were times that they just went with Tim Jernigan and Fletcher Cox. It seems like Jim is kind of experimenting right now, trying to figure out the right combinations to put out there without Malik Jackson.
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise. I didn't see that coming with Josh, but he does like that athleticism at times. From the interior rush, and Josh is athletic, so who knows, you throw him in there, maybe he can get something done. We talked about before Joe Osman got injured, they were planning to implement that Joker package for him, so it looks like he's trying to find that athleticism to have two different types of rush. to have the two interior players like Malik and Fletcher or Tim and Fletcher, and then have that second package, which he's used mostly here in the past. In his previous stops, he'd prefer to use two real defensive tackles in the nickel. I think ultimately that's where he wants to get to, and that's where he thought he was with Malik. But that's what this league is about. Guys get hurt, and you got to make do. And the Eagles have been really good at that. So you almost have to give them the benefit of the doubt, try to figure it out. But this happens to every team in the league, and that's the context. And you got to – the teams that handle it the best, they're the most successful.
Well, what doesn't happen to most teams in the league is that your tight end and your two receivers go down. We heard Goddard in pregame was kind of ruled out. That was the one injury that Doug was really specific more so on today about when it happened and why. But what is the feel around Jackson and Alshon? I mean, he did indicate that if this game was a must-win, I thought I heard him say that, right? If this was a must-win situation, that those guys may have been able to play. So does that give us any insight on their availability next week?
Yeah. More so behind the scenes, I'm hearing Deshaun potentially than Alshon. But we'll see. I mean, we'll get a better indication on Wednesday how quickly these guys are able to come along from it. But, yeah, he did mention that it's tough to tell, but in some kind of must-win atmosphere, guys are probably going to try to push through something they're not going to try to push through in week 2 because it's a long season. And in hindsight, it looks really difficult because you're so close to winning that game. You have to believe that Deshaun is out there, if Alshon's out there, if Dallas is out there, they're probably going to win that game. But that's also, you never know how things are going to shake out, and things happen differently. And Jim Schwartz specifically always talks about games having personalities, and the personality changed. And I think, the second half of Carson Wentz was so spectacular. And that's like one of those games we occasionally see from Carson where he's got to put things on his shoulder and he's making plays and he's doing things, extending plays. That probably doesn't happen if those guys are in there. So you never know how the narrative of the game goes, but it's good to have good players out there. And that's
I feel it's an obligation. I feel it's an obligation to ask, do you feel that they should have ran the ball more? Doug said, it was in the plan, but they kind of got away. But he also admitted, we tried to run, we just didn't do it very well.
They weren't successful.
But is that okay? Is that disheartening? Is it disheartening then that they were not able to be more successful, seeing that Minnesota, which isn't thought to have this great offensive line, whipped them last week?
Well, I got news for you. Minnesota has a terrible offensive line. You saw that yesterday, but they got a hell of a running back. And this is what I said, and fans are not going to like it. The Penn State guy there is not going to like it. The Eagles don't have Dalvin Cook.
No, I actually made that point earlier. I'm with you on that.
They don't
Jordan
have
Howard.
anything resembling. And that's what I was saying, John. No, I'm not saying you were comparing. I'm just saying you're a Penn State guy. Miles is a Penn State guy. Miles is not ready to play right now. In this running back group, because the Eagles obviously don't believe in Jordan Howard. I hope you guys are okay there.
That was another injured Eagle, by the way, that just got carted off the Barefoot Beach Bar.
But I'm going to be honest here. The Eagles stink at the running back position right now. They're not good. That's arguably, offensively, no question, that's their worst position. You can throw linebacker in there from a defensive standpoint. It's one of the worst positions on the team. Now, it's better than last year when it was just awful, but it's still bad. And it's still bottom 10 in the NFL, and I might be being kind. It's probably bottom 5.
Is that due to personnel, or is that how the coaching staff is handling the personnel?
No, it's personnel. They're not good. And people, that's what I said about Miles. They're skipping steps. The assumption Miles Sanders is a starting running back in this league of any caliber. We just mentioned, I'm not blaming you guys, but anybody who wants to compare him to somebody like Dalvin Cook, you're nuts.
In
but
fact,
these are not
in fact,
those
John,
types of running.
I think he hurt I was telling the guys, I think the offensive line, there were some holdings. It looked like there was some bad play. I think some of his dancing and undisciplined running makes them have to shift how they're blocking and got them flagged for holdings that they wouldn't ordinarily get.
Well, part of it is that you're right. He is undisciplined. He wasn't running hard. He's not hitting the holes like he should be. And that does, by human nature, that will have the offensive line reaching a little bit. That's another reason why I don't understand why this team isn't playing Jordan Howard more. But the second part, as a whole, the league is one of their points of emphasis is holding, so it's up all over the league. They're just calling that. So that's part of it as well. And then the third, which, Doug doesn't want to run the ball. And half of this, I often talk about how badly the Eagles wanted Christian McCaffrey in 2017 and Dalvin Cook, by the way. They wanted both of those guys. I almost think Doug is happy they didn't get him because he doesn't want to have to be in the situation where he has a good running back.
The last thing I'll leave you with, John, and there's a lot of things from that game last night that we can continue to kind of pontificate on, but does it blow your mind that Zach Ertz can't break a tackle? Have the inner will to know you need a half a yard, not even.
That was I can't even believe people are so. I've watched Zach up close for a long time. He's a really big guy. He's not a good blocker, but that part of it has to do with the fact he was never asked to do that at the college level. He is tough as nails. He got whacked. I thought there was the potential he had broken ribs. I don't even mention him because I'm sure he's going to play next week. I don't know where this narrative started about yards after catch. He's not Travis Kelce, but that's the athleticism part of it. At some point, like Isaac Seumalo, I'll put him in this category as well because he had such a poor game. Well, part of that has to do with Grady Jarrett is really good.
Yeah.
I know
Ertz said last night that he had never played. I know Ertz said last night that he had never played every single snap of a game, and maybe he just was tired. But it's like, I don't know.
He's got a skill.
Yeah. The guy on him, he's big. You just said it. He's an athlete. He's bigger than that guy.
You have to know where it is.
It's
come
more
on,
of
man.
He's got to be ahead of the sticks when he catches the football. I think that's more of it. You have to get to the sticks, but even that, you're trying to come back to the football. NFL players, there's so little separation, even when you think they're open, because the players are so good on the other side. You're trying to catch the football. He should have gotten a little bit deeper. I think that's what the criticism should be on that type of situation. You got to get to the sticks. You got to understand where they are. So I think that's more of a legitimate
today's day and age,
criticism.
though, John, nobody tackles. Everybody breaks tackles. Everybody gets out of that first tackle. Come on, man. He needs a half a yard with the game on the line.
Well, I don't know. In that particular play, maybe if you're in the open field with some momentum going the right direction, that was more of a basketball box-out play. That to me is you got to get to the sticks. That's the bigger criticism.
Yeah, well, there's definitely that in it, too. John McMullen, at JF McMullen. More of his coverage on last night's loss is at 97.3 ESPN.com. And we've got a lot of coverage there. And, of course, all week long getting you ready for Eagles and Lions right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, guys.